Hey everyone, here are 5 things to consider if you want to prioritize effectiveness when selecting reformer exercises. Range of motion is an important factor with any exercise. You want to activate as many muscle fibers as you can, and working in a full range of motion will help you do that. For example, with a bicep curl, if you were to reduce your range to a partial range of motion, it would be less effective than a full range of motion. And we can take that same idea onto exercises on the reformer. Number 2, resistance in the full range of motion. Now this comes down to which load that you're working with. You could have either spring tension, body weight, or external load from dumbbells, for example. Now if you're working with spring tension, it's important that you have resistance in the full range of motion, especially if you're going the direction of heavier being harder, more tension being harder. For example, if you're doing a chest press seated facing the front of your reformer, driving your arms straight, if you lose resistance in that range of motion, that's telling you that's not as effective as it could be. It's also telling you that you have more potential to move more resistance. Body weight. Let's just say you're doing a standing split, and we're talking about range of motion making exercise more effective. Now, if you are unable to move your carriage out further than your hip distance, that's telling you that there's not enough tension on the springs to support you in a full range of motion. External load, like dumbbells, if you are able to move your arm in any position, holding the dumbbell, but the challenge is meant to be a bicep curl, that's telling you straight away that the dumbbell is not heavy enough to be effective. Next one is quick transition times. Let's say you're in a class that goes for 45 minutes. And the average transition between either body position, spring change, or prop change is taking around 60 seconds from stopping the entire group to restarting the next exercise. If you teach 15 exercises, 15 transitions, that means 1/3 of your class was spent not working out. So quick transitions will be a good reflection of the skill level of the instructor to enable people to restart the next movement as quickly as possible. So a good way to make your workout more effective is to minimize transition time. Next is the ability to control intensity. Now remember, we're dealing with a group of people with varying body mass and ability level. And for us to be able to control the intensity, we need to have a system so we can be consistent with our delivery. If we break it down, we could say every exercise has a muscle group which is being targeted, because the spring tension will determine which muscle groups we're working. We have to be able to control the load and the intensity for everybody. So for us to be effective, we need to be able to challenge every level of ability in that room with us. And the easiest way to do that is to intentionally start off at a lower level which is achievable for everyone in the room, and then to scale up the intensity throughout the exercise to make sure that all levels are challenged within that exercise. Next is important to consider the role stability has in an exercise. Because we have infinite movement potential with the reformer, there's so many ways to do the exact same thing. The only thing that makes it really different is where we put the body weight. For example, if you're standing on the ground on a hard surface, you've got a low risk of falling and you've got great stability from that hard surface. Now, if we elevate you and put you onto a box which is a bit softer, the risk of falling has increased. Less stability makes it harder to balance. Now, if we keep on changing where we put your body weight, we can make it harder and create even less stability. So if we take your foot onto the platform, now all machines are different with the platform. Some have small platforms which are awkward to stand on. Some have bigger platforms which are soft and harder to stabilize with. Whichever position you have your foot on the platform, the surface will determine how hard it is to stabilize. And then the elevation increases the risk of injury if you fall. But then if we take the body weight and put it onto the carriage, doing a lunge facing towards the risers at the back, or the pulleys, what you'll find there is that if you've got your body weight on a moving carriage, it's really hard to stabilize there. So we have so many ways to do the exact same thing. In order for us to be effective, it's also contextual based on who's doing these exercises. For us to be effective for them, we have to choose the best version of that exercise for them, to enable them to get the best result from the class. Because it doesn't benefit anybody to teach someone with average balance or poor balance, a really hard version of a lunge which requires a lot of balance. All you're going to do is put them at risk of injury, and it's far more beneficial to put them into an easier position they can do for longer with less risk. They're going to have a better movement pattern. They're going to build up their confidence and their attributes faster with more reps and more body awareness from experience. And another thing to do is to consider the load itself. In order for us to be effective at strengthening people, progressively overloading people is essential, and that's why reformer workouts are another form of resistance training. For us to be able to do that effectively, we have to be able to control the load and the intensity that we deliver it at. And we have to know exactly what we're working, how hard people are working, what's an optimal range of motion to work in, and then to be able to adjust it so there's a direction of progression. And the really cool thing about the reformer, if you're using the springs, it can only go two ways of progression. It's either we're using body weight and we take away the support of the spring, so we make you work harder by supporting more of your own mass, so less tension is harder, or it's spring tension, which is a challenge, and more resistance is harder. So if you look at every single exercise in which you're using the springs with the reformer, it can be progressed in only one of two ways. Either less support is harder or more resistance is harder. And that's already telling you then which muscle group is working to start with and what a harder version of that will look like. So thanks for listening, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all on my trip around the US, which is continuing until February. Then I'm looking to go through Canada, the UK, and Europe before coming back to Australia in 2023. I'll see you soon.